Uncharted Cave Incident. Benjamin Miller and two friends decided to explore an uncharted cave. The cave was known by only a few people. It was famous for having very tight, awkwardly angled passages. The passages created a maze of stone. As they went deeper into the cave, they had to squeeze through narrow openings. They crawled on their bellies through some parts. The air was thin and hard to breathe. The cold stone walls made them feel very cold. Benjamin was leading the group. He spotted what looked like an opening ahead. The opening seemed to lead to a wider space. Benjamin was excited about reaching a larger chamber. He called out to his friends about the bigger space ahead. Without waiting for their opinion, Benjamin started to squeeze through the narrow opening. But as he pushed himself further in, the passage got much narrower. The passage curved sharply in a dangerous way. Before Benjamin realized it, he was completely stuck. Panic took over as he tried to pull himself back. The rock held him tightly, pressing against his chest and back. His friends hurried to help him. They squeezed through the tight tunnel to reach Benjamin. Every time they tried to pull him free, the stone seemed to grip him tighter. They pulled and pushed, but nothing worked. Benjamin's body was twisted in an unnatural way. The friends realized this was a very serious situation. One of them squeezed back through the passage to the surface. He frantically called for rescue teams. The minutes felt like hours as they waited in the cold, dark cave. Benjamin's breathing became more difficult. His face was pale and covered in sweat. When the rescue team finally arrived, they quickly looked at the situation. They knew this would be a very challenging rescue. The cave was too narrow to use heavy machinery. The rescuers had to use chisels to break the rock. They also set up a pulley system to try to pull Benjamin out. As hours passed, Benjamin's condition got worse. The tight passage pressed against his chest, making it hard to breathe. The coldness of the cave began to hurt Benjamin. His body temperature dropped dangerously low. He started to shiver uncontrollably. As more hours passed, the situation became desperate. Benjamin was in terrible pain. The rescuers chiseled at the rock and adjusted the pulley system, but the narrow passage would not give way. Benjamin's body had reached its limit. Finally, the rescuers were able to widen the gap enough to free Benjamin. The rescuers took him out and rushed him to the hospital. Unfortunately, Benjamin passed away. Szczelina, Mietusia Cave Incident. On April 7, 2008, Michael decided to explore a cave by himself. Michael was 30 years old. He was not an experienced caver. Michael wanted to explore a cave in Okraw National Park in Poland. Michael had studied everything he could about caving. Michael learned that caving was not allowed in the park. The park had put metal bars over cave entrances to keep people out. But Michael decided to explore the caves anyway. This was a big mistake. Michael told his mother about his plans before he left. His mother was excited to hear about his adventure. After Michael said goodbye, his mother heard nothing from him. April 7th became April 8th with no word from Michael. At first, his mother thought he was just tired and forgot to call, but she started to feel worried. His mother could not stop worrying. Michael's mother drove to Okraw to look for him. She quickly found his car in the parking area, but there was no sign of where Michael had gone. Michael's mother called the police. The police came quickly and made a report about Michael's disappearance. The police thought Michael might be stuck or lost in a cave. They contacted the cave rescues. The cave entrance was only 8 feet wide. They found a chamber that sloped downward. The rescuers found signs that Michael had been there. They saw a backpack. As the rescuers went deeper, the cave walls got closer together. They had to squeeze through very narrow passages. This cave was like a death trap for someone with no experience. The rescuers faced many challenges trying to get through. They realized they needed special tools to make the passages wider. When the special tools arrived, the rescuers carefully widened the opening. About 46 feet from the cave entrance, they found Michael's belongings. They found his phone, watch, helmet, headlamp, and gloves. Next to these items, they saw Michael's feet, but his feet were not moving. Michael was stuck upside down in a tight spot called the clamp. The rescuers called out to Michael, but he did not answer. Michael's skin was cold and his legs were stiff. Michael had been dead for a long time. Rescuers worked carefully to free Michael's body. They used chisels to extract him from the tight space. Once they freed him, they had to move his body through the narrow tunnel. Finally, they removed the body from the cave. Michael had been stuck upside down for many hours. This made his heart work harder and his lungs struggle. Doctors think Michael died from hypothermia or from being upside down too long. Sand Cave Incident. Floyd Collins was an experienced caver from Kentucky. He was famous for exploring Mammoth Cave. People knew Floyd as a fearless cave explorer. In January 1925, Floyd decided to explore Sand Cave alone. It was a cold winter day. Floyd brought only a lantern with him. Sand Cave was a maze of tunnels and hidden rooms deep underground. The air inside was cool and damp. As Floyd went deeper, he found a narrow crawlway. He had never seen this passage before. He decided to squeeze through the tight passage. Suddenly, something terrible happened. A huge rock fell from the ceiling. The rock crashed down and trapped Floyd's leg. The rock was too heavy for Floyd to move. Floyd called for help, but his voice echoed in the empty cave. Floyd realized he was in serious trouble. He was alone and pinned under the boulder. Hours felt like days as Floyd tried to free himself. The air became harder to breathe. Above ground, Floyd's family started to worry. On February 2nd, Floyd's brother Homer went to search for him. Homer finally found Floyd deep inside Sand Cave. Homer tried to free his brother but could not move the rock. Homer raced back to the surface to get help. He gathered a team of rescue workers. The rescue team knew this would be very difficult. Some tunnels were collapsing. Rocks fell and blocked the way to Floyd. When the rescuers finally reached Floyd, they tried to move the rock, but the boulder would not move. Floyd had made a big mistake. He had gone too deep without proper equipment or support. The rescuers did not give up. They dug a shaft, trying to get closer to Floyd. Floyd's situation was getting worse. Floyd fought against pain and fear. He held on to hope that rescuers would save him, but deep down, Floyd knew his time was running out. Hope began to fade as his body got weaker. Floyd was suffering from not having water and being too cold. Finally, on February 16th, the rescuers reached Floyd for the second time. By then, it was too late. Floyd Collins had died in the cave. Arctomys Cave Incident. Arctomys Cave is located in the Canadian wilderness. It is the second deepest cave in Canada. The cave goes down 1,640 feet into the earth. The cave is very challenging to explore. The first part is called the Endless Climb. Explorers must go down steep and vertical shafts. Many passages are flooded with icy water from glaciers. On October 17, 1991, 4 experienced cavers went to explore the cave. Rick Black, Chris Zimmerman, Hugo Mulick, and Ron Lell were the team. Rick, Chris, and Hugo worked as rangers at Mount Robson Provincial Park. Ron was also a skilled caver. A helicopter dropped them off at the cave entrance. They quickly set up their base camp. The team went 400 meters deep into the cave by 11:30 p.m. They reached a vertical drop called the Refresher. This was a 29-foot drop through a freezing waterfall. The waterfall soaked anyone who went down the rope. One by one, the cavers rappelled down the drop. When it was Rick's turn, something terrible happened. The rope was tied to a 400-kilogram boulder. As Rick moved, the boulder came loose. The huge boulder crashed down and hit Rick. The boulder crushed Rick's pelvis and knocked him unconscious. The other cavers rushed to help Rick. They were relieved to find Rick was still alive, but Rick was in terrible pain and could not move. The team knew first aid, but Rick needed a hospital. They tried to move Rick, but it was impossible. Chris stayed with Rick to take care of him. Hugo and Ron left to get help. It took them 5 hours to reach the cave entrance. They could not contact their helicopter pilot. Meanwhile, Chris tried to keep Rick warm in the freezing, dark cave. The two men turned off their headlamps to save battery power. By the morning of October 19th, the rescuers arrived at the cave. This was 36 hours after Rick was hurt. As time passed, both men got worse from the cold. Rick told Chris to leave and save himself. Rick knew that if Chris stayed, they would both die. Chris did not want to leave, but finally agreed. Chris promised to return with help. As Chris climbed out, he met the first rescuers. Chris finally reached the surface. Chris was treated for hypothermia and taken to a hospital by helicopter. When the rescuers reached Rick with medical supplies, it was too late. Rick had died shortly before they arrived. Knox Cave Incident. In January 1970, 5 people went to explore Knox Cave. Knox Cave was famous for a very tight tunnel called the Gun Barrel. The gun barrel was only 18 inches wide and 60 feet long. The cave entrance was a hole in the ground. One by one, they went down into the dark, cold cave. 3 people decided to try crawling through the gun barrel. One of them was Peter Vons, who was 14 years old. This was Peter's first time in a cave. He wanted to prove he could do it like the older cavers. Peter watched as the others crawled into the tight tunnel. When it was Peter's turn, he took a deep breath and crawled in. The tunnel was much tighter than he expected. His body scraped against the rough rock walls. The air was hard to breathe and he felt squeezed from all sides. Peter used his elbows and knees to move forward inch by inch. He was only 8 feet from the end when something went wrong. Peter's knee slipped into a crack in the cave floor. At first he thought he could pull it out easily, but when Peter tried to move his knee, it was completely stuck. Peter started to panic and called for help. The people ahead of him heard his voice and turned around. When they realized Peter was stuck, they tried to help him, but Peter's body was blocking the entire tunnel. No one could move forward or backward past Peter. They tried pulling on Peter to free him. Every time they pulled, Peter screamed in pain. They had to stop because they were hurting him. The group was stuck in the cold, narrow tunnel. Hours passed and everyone was getting very cold. Outside the cave, the other 12 people were worried. One person went into the cave to check on them. When he found them trapped, he ran back to get help. Police officers and firefighters came to the cave. They saw that this was a very difficult rescue. The tunnel was too narrow for rescuers to fit inside. Hours went by as they tried different ways to free Peter's knee. At 8:30 at night, the rescuers had a new idea. They poured the soapy water around Peter's stuck knee. Everyone worked together to pull Peter's leg very carefully. Finally, Peter's knee started to move. With one last gentle pull, his knee came free from the crack. One by one, all three people crawled out to safety.